I think we're good to go. I'm just trying to get the screen bigger there. I can't. Settings. You're good to go.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Sorry, I had managed to get an avatar in there. Just sorry.
That's all right.
Try again.
Brian, there seems to be a filter that you put on where we can just see. Oh, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's gone now.
Lovely. Thanks, Ian. Right, morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to you all. It probably seems like a distant memory now as we're back to everything. Firstly, before we go through the agenda today, we've got a couple of apologies with Phil Sherwood, Amanda, and Oliver is substituting for David. Welcome. Is there anyone else? That's everyone, I think.
Sorry, just say yes to this. Sorry, so we have apologies from Liz Woodards as well. She's been substituted by Robert.
Yep.
And I have got apologies from Kelly Moon and Amanda. Yeah.
Right. Lovely, thank you. Just going through the minutes from the last meeting, we'll just go through each page. If there's anything that you want to correct factually, or please spell out. So page 7, page 8.
Somebody's got their hand up. Ashley Pierce has got his hand up.
Ashley.
Hello. Just on page 7, I'm listed as being with the NEU, but I'm NASUWT.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Okay, page 8, page 9, page 10, 11, 12, and 13. Lovely. All right, so those minutes are all approved. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to the next part, we have Thank you. There's no declarations. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Right, so we're on to section 19, the policy, which I felt was given out this morning. Is that correct?
Colleague, unfortunately, the author of the report, Carol Vernon, can't be here, but I know very well the very policy in the context that it is a policy derived from the central government and then driven by Southeast Education Coordination Group called SESLIP, in order to have consistent Section 19 policy across the country. Section 19 policy is about choosing people who are not able to attend the school they enroll to when a teacher, the school, or parent request their children to be educated other than at their own school, at alternative provision or any alternative arrangement. So obviously there has been issues across the country. There isn't a clear criteria threshold So different places can operate in a very, very different way, very different way. So you may have children who have a C and D, who, because of that, they need alternative provision. You may have people who are permanently excluded, or indeed, they are at risk of permanently excluded. So there has been an arrangement for the child to have a time out in certain places. When they're ready, they may come back to mainstream school, etc. So that's what Section 19 Education Act is about. It's about the duty to educate children when they are not able to attend school, mainstream school. So it's a very, very high level of sort of legislation. So nationally, now we're required to have local policy. Because it's the same as like permanent exclusion, there will be an issue of money follow pupil in some circumstances, not every case. So I thought it would be useful to bring this to this forum as well, although this has been disseminated to head teachers group, head teachers dropping, etc. So we think for this group to know this policy is useful before we finalize that. So this is really for your information, it's not really for you to vote for. I hope I explained what this policy is about, to have consistent threshold to decide when a child should receive alternative provision, under what circumstances, with what criteria. And also local mechanism for you to know. Many of you are familiar with multi-agency inclusion clinic, so-called MAIC. Yeah. We want to use that mechanism. You, any school, where any pupil is believe they meet the criteria of Section 19. Firstly, we explored at that foreign, MAIC foreign. Some of them not necessarily will end up with alternative provision. We may get advice from professional, multi-agency professional, to decide the child may still stay in your school, or indeed, at the meeting, the consensus that had been Section 19 may need to be looked into. And then we have another forum that will formally decide to look at the case whether meet Section 19 criteria or not. So this paper will give you the detail of local arrangement. I have to say that it's not copy and paste. Throughout Southeast 19 local authority, we have this consistent approach. The government want that. Also, when we talk to there's an organization called Local Authority and Social Care Tribunal, Ombudsman, they pick up a lot of cases where parents may complain that the children are not receiving education. So there's some blur line. In some cases, school and local authority may think this is a parental responsibility, try to not attend school, probably they may have illness issue, but they are ready to go back to school. But from parents' perspective, then now my child not ready to go back to school, my child need to get Section 19 alternative provision. So that's why from tribunal or ombudsman point of view, they want local authority to have a very, very clear policy, agree with the local education provider. So that's why we have this draft policy, and today we present to you. You have any question, any query? I try myself to ask, although the author, Carol, is not here today.
Thank you, Ming. Shirley.
Can I just ask, in terms of the panel that's on page 11 of the policy, would it not be imperative for the head teacher of the school referring the child to be present to actually put the case forward? Because I note the panel is all, like, it's the educational welfare officer, principal senior education psychologist, manager of the team, manager of special education needs, and the head teacher of Foundry, but there's no, they're all local authority representatives that are going to make that decision then on that Section 19 panel. So would it not make sense to have some input from the head teacher who's making the, or somebody from the school who's making the referral for that Section 19 request?
So I can take it back, school who make referral to be at that panel. Yeah.
Yeah, the question I have is more around, it's slightly blurred. So in one part of it, it says about the referral to education welfare officer, and then they go through like a process. But then obviously you've got a second part with the panel. So like from a parental perspective, they could be involved in any way. But what is the point? That is when it's triggered for the thing. Is it a school decision to trigger the Section 19 referral? Can the parent trigger the Section 19 referral? That's the part I'm sort of a bit unclear about.
I think what you're concerned, I'm trying to clarify about the referral into education welfare service is a required process or.
Yeah, so what it says within the policy in the first section is about the you refer children to the education welfare service. The education welfare officer liaises with the school, does that part, and then there's the second part, which is then referral to the MAKE. So is there a risk of some children just going down the education welfare service? But at what point does it cross over to like a Section 19? That's the part I didn't feel was as clear.
Yeah, I think the referral into education welfare service is not compulsory. There would be some cases because of risk of permanent exclusion, for example, or that will go into education welfare services. I think what we can make it clear is that all those cases would need to go to that panel. It's not just a decision made by education welfare service. Yeah, we can clarify that.
Can I just clarify then? Because I think under the legislation, correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking at 10 days, a child not being in school like for 10 days, and then it says in here 15 days, and then there's going to be meetings to discuss it. So my concern is how long this process is now going to take, because at the moment there is quite clear legislation, the Education Act on Section 19 that we're talking about. So are we confident that as a local authority we're going to meet the legislation with this process, and how long it's going to take? So what's the timeline on this process?
I don't have a definitive timeline, but obviously, I think we want to try to stick to make arrangements as early as possible. But again, in the legislation, they didn't say exactly when. I think that, but to comply with the education, let every child need to receive full-time equivalent education. I think that's the guiding principle we are working on. But I don't have a clear timeline, how many days the child, the placement will be put in place, etc. No, I don't have that. But it's very important we get the child education arranged.
I think that's my question, is because if there's no timeline on that, then we could be looking at, we know historically we could be looking at 6 months, we could be looking at, we've got children who we experience who are out of education for 3, 4, 5 years. While, the whole of secondary education for some children where they are severe absence, refusing to come to school, medically vulnerable. And that's why we as schools have started using the Section 19, is to try and move this forward. And my concern is now we're putting in a policy without any time frame of how long this process should take. So I would just urge that we look at the time frame. If a child is, X amount of days, or from the time that the local authority is notified, then, because what we're saying in this policy is where the legislation says the local authority are responsible for helping and supporting the education after day 10, this is basically going back to now panels and being pushed back to schools to arrange the alternative provision from how I read it, without a time frame. So I just want to be really clear that there is going to be a time frame, and that's not going to be the case. It's just going to be, well, as a school, you're responsible now to sort this out, because we can't put a child in a school hospital or, and putting a child on tutoring sometimes is not appropriate because they're then staying in the house. So I think we just have to be really clear on how this is going to process, because this is a policy, because we've got to the stage that as a local authority we are using the Section 19 to support some of our most vulnerable children, and this feels like a way of now pausing schools doing that. So I would just like that raised, and really for this to be looked at quite closely. Legally,
when the child entitled to the Section 19, that needs to be arrange immediately. I think what you call it, a delay or whatever circumstances should be regarded exceptional circumstances, which again, those are the cases very often picked up by tribunal and ombudsman, and then they will find either local authority or another provider or whatever not fulfill their duty. So that will be the exceptional case. For all cases, we should work along the line. Once the child being meeting the threshold, the arrangement need to be made immediately.
I think, Ming, I agree, and I think that's why when I look at the flow chart on page 16, page 16.16, by the time we get through that flow chart, the word immediate, which you've just used, is not going to be met. That's my point. So we agree that we just need to make sure that we are supporting that child immediately, as opposed to, and that's why I think it's important we have a timeline on this. How often are the Section 19 panel going to meet? Is that on a case by case within 2 days of hearing the child, of the case, etc. So a timeline is important for that word immediately, because that is what the legislation says. It's to protect us, really, all of us, because that's what the legislation says. And if you're looking at tribunals, that's what's important. And ultimately, the sooner we break the cycle of the child not coming to school, the more likely we are to be successful.
Sorry, Ming, can you put the mic on?
Yeah. At the operational level, we can tighten it up, make sure, I think, the timeline like that. But in principle, the principle is the child entitled to education, no single date should be lost. We can't really say that our education need to be arranged in 1 month's time or in 2 weeks' time. I think it should be arranged on the date the child entitled to that education. But practically, I think we can reflect an operational. There will be operational procedure to come with the policy. At least really high-level policy. Again, I can take it back to my Southeast group. Just so happen, just to share with you, I've chaired in the Southeast Inclusion Education Group. They have the same policy. Maybe what your feedback can be useful to them as well. Okay.
Yeah, just I guess I just want to highlight about the funding section. It does seem to me to sort of try to oversimplify the actual position. I get the principle of the money following the pupil, but in reality, pupils that children that have been in this will have had probably had significant resource spent on them specifically, and B, the funding model is designed on sort of general provision in large classes, and also if a child joins a school the day after the census, then we wouldn't get funding for 11 months. So I think it's a bit of an oversimplification to go, if they're our alternative provision, then that bit of money, and managing lots of in-year flows of money per pupil is extremely hard to plan. So I think we just need to be careful about sort of boiling it down to bits of a child money allocated, when actually the funding model isn't about that. It's general census day, here for a year. If you had people join afterwards, you just have to sort of provide it for it. So it's more complicated than I would say that sets out.
I absolutely agree with you. I think in the Southeast, we discussed about this. There's a similar concern. Although different local authorities will have slightly different response to that question, that very good question. I think locally, my final colleague, we can work out the local sort of operational arrangement is not straightforward. I think we work out a local operational process. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm guessing it's a draft and it's not been approved, the actual policy yet. So taking on board these comments, and then it would be recirculated amongst schools. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Right. I'm guessing it's still with you, Ming. The DfE attendance targets.
Can I just clarify that the author of the Section 19, Carol Vernon, when she prepared for Section 19, she also prepared attendance target for head teacher drop-ins. So because it is the first time her report came to this forum, so she attached attendance target to this forum as well. I think it's still relevant to you for you to know. DFE now want to set individual school target, but I have to clarify it's not a school finance matter. Well, indirectly, it have some finance matter. So if the chair is happy, I think we can just drop that particular item. It's been sent in by mistake.
Right. The draft DSG budget. Angela and Al.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. The APT and the funding arrived quite late in the day, as has been the pattern from the last couple of years. So the modelling all happened just before Christmas, and we had a meeting with the Task and Finish following the Christmas break to go through the modelling that we had carried out. So for today, you've all seen the paper, hopefully, had a chance to read through it. There are a number of decisions that we would ask the schools forum to vote on in order for us to move forward with the block budget. Okay, I'll go through these individually and we can talk about them. Okay, the paper that you have sets out the decisions behind this and the detail. So the first thing that we're looking at is the de-delegated services for the maintained schools only. This follows our kind of historic pattern where we're looking at the cover for staff cost supply cover. That's an element that goes through the APT. We do this, we calculate it on a rolling 4-year basis. We adjust it for academisations, and the per pupil rate we're proposing is there at £28.91, which is a slight reduction on the previous year.
You need to project your voice a bit
Oh, people not speak up. So we're proposing to keep the same services, which is a staff supply cover, and the per pupil rate has reduced slightly from the previous year, and that's factored into the APT, which gives us a total provision to provide that cover of £135,500. We ask that the maintained schools representative vote on this matter.
Thank you, Angela. Is there any questions before we vote? Yep, Judy.
Can I just hear what you said? Yeah, I couldn't hear what she was saying. Sorry, Angela.
Yes, I'll try and project my voice. The first thing we're looking at is the de-delegation for the maintained schools. So this is the element that we take from maintained schools prior to issuing your budgets, because it funds the staff supply cover. So this is something we've done for a number of years, and we charge that on a per pupil basis. We do it on a rolling 4-year calculation to take into account pupil numbers and academisations, which then gives us a rate per pupil that we think will cover this cost. The proposed rate is £28.91, which is a reduction on last year, and the total provision is around £135,000. This is an item that the maintained schools only vote on because it impacts them.
Can I ask what staff cost supply cover is?
That covers things like maternity, paternity cover, jury duty, that kind of staff cover.
Any other questions? Historically, this has always come through, and it's there for the maintained schools only. Can I just check, Ian, do you vote amongst Ian Thomas as part of maintained?
Yes, I do.
You do. And David? Not. Yes. Not. Yep. Okay, that's great. I just want to check that first. So we're voting whether to approve to set this rate. So for you either for or against. Judy?
I'm a newbie. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I'm looking at Mark. Mark, go first.
Okay. I'll say 4.
Claire Skelland, sorry.
Is Skelland, the S is missing again. 4 for me, please.
Thank you. Ian Thomas?
Ian Thomas?
Yes, 4.
Thank you. So that's unanimously through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The other thing that impacts on the school's budgets is the growth fund and the element within the APT. We have a couple of things here. The growth fund policy, which we initially brought to the schools forum before Christmas. We've subsequently had another meeting with the task and finish group, and I do apologise, the revised version was supposed to go out as an appendix to your papers, which was brought to our attention this morning. The key revisions following our meeting, our last schools forum meeting, I've highlighted there. So we've clarified the lag funding and the funding period. We've detailed the funding methodology. We've removed the requirement for schools to use revenue reserves. And we've added consideration of the funding route. Either do we put it through the APT, so that comes through annual funding that way, or it's part of the retained growth fund where we will make direct payments. The slight change that we had following that meeting and our task and finish group last week was there was a request to clarify the options for any treatment of an underspend. In the original document, we said this will be treated in line with the regulations. There was clarification requested around what that looks like. So we've put in some bullet points which says about do we retain it, do we distribute it? Let me just, oh, sorry. We've highlighted that in the revised version, so it just gives clarification about what the use of that is.
Darren, I'm going to ask you if you'd like to sort of jump in at the moment just to expand on anything from the task and finish group, with you chairing that group.
Thanks, Brian. Yes, we've spent a lot of time looking at growth funding and also the schools that are going to receive that. And the schools who are receiving growth funding for 26-27 were included in the forum minutes or forum papers in December. We've had feedback through from various sources. Brian's met with all primary heads. I've met with secondary heads and with the CEOs, and we think this is the best position we can get to in the time frame that we've got.
Thanks, Darren. Any questions from anybody? We're aware that it did come through late this morning. Has everyone do people want a chance to read the policy first before we vote?
Can I ask a question, Brian? It's Claire from Winnersh.
Yes, you can. Yep.
Can I just sort of give you what I think is my really sort of layman's nutshell description of what we're saying? So the bits in yellow are highlighted as changes. Am I right in thinking that the original growth fund policy didn't allow for any underspend to be moved easily over to the school's block funding, and that this change now makes that easier to do for the local authority, and therefore any schools that weren't included in that list we had in December that may have already been on the growth fund but don't need the money because their numbers haven't continued to grow, that they will then lose some funding and that will then be passed to the overall schools block. Is that kind of the right situation we're talking about?
No, the clarification was we'd put in that the any surplus could be treated in line with the regulations, and all we've added there are what does that mean. So those 3 bullet points are just the things that we could do. It's not a sort of reduction from schools that require growth funding. It was just
No,
to be,
it's more the ones that don't require growth funding that may have already been included on the old policy. I thought that was part of the discussion when all the information went out to schools before we had the last forum meeting, that some may not need that growth funding because they haven't continued to grow, and that the policy as it stood before didn't allow any underspend to be distributed back to the schools block. And now you've added in this bullet point that makes it easier to do that. And that's what I thought the change was, but I may be completely wrong and barking up the wrong tree.
it doesn't make it any harder or easier. It just clarifies what the regulations allow us to do with any surplus with the agreement of schools forum. It was just we were asked to clarify what that actually meant.
Okay.
Thanks, Claire. No, right. Part of the task and finish challenge was towards the authorities. It was to put in a bit more clarification about what it is that the regulations apply for that surplus to be carried over. So that's where that's come from, to help make more sense, because we felt beforehand not everyone was very clear about where that surplus could go, whereas we feel now it's a lot more clearer. Oliver.
So I appreciate I'm coming.
That's right.
New at this, and I haven't.
It's great.
Sort of chance to all this morning. I guess I appreciate the context of growth policy and growth in when we're seeing fall in roles as being sort of the general position is tricky. Anyway, I guess sort of. And the sort of fall in roles, I haven't seen the fall in roles policy, but the sort of general national fall in roles requirements aren't probably fit for purpose now, because they don't sort of, there's a national debate about what do you do with falling roles and the funding, which we're not here to do today. But so I guess I sort of recognise the context that it's tricky. I guess a couple of things. One, I'm not clear about whether this funds effectively actual classes with pupils in, or does it fund spare capacity? Because that if it's funding capacity that's not actually got pupils in, that does feel wrong when there is spare capacity in the sector. So I guess the question is the funding going to just fund pupils who are actually in classes, or is it funding capacity to sort of spare capacity? Because that feels a bit odd, but I haven't quite got the context completely yet. And I guess second thing is, and again, sorry if it's sort of in one of the finance reports, but what are the reserves carried forward in the growth funding and sort of what they are? Because I haven't spotted them in any of the papers, but I might just have sort of missed it. So I'm just interested in, has the growth fund build up the reserve?
I'll let Angela answer that, but there is parts. There is 400,000 surplus in the growth fund. Yep. And then, but a lot of the growth fund has actually been ring fenced for places that have already been guaranteed in historic growth funding over the years, where those schools have been building up. So I'll let Angela to clarify, or Elle to clarify more on that, but yeah.
So there's no sort of reserve brought forward. For 26-27, the allocation from the DFE was about 940,000. We are proposing to distribute 545, so it's around about £400,000 surplus in 26-27. And in terms of the numbers, we do build in about a 5% capacity into the overall system. That's place planning's objective.
Okay, so just to be clear, sorry, I thought sorry if I got it wrong, but I thought I saw in one of the previous finance reports an underspend against the 25-26, or forecast underspend against 25-26. Did I read that wrong? Sorry, I might well have done.
Yeah, so there's a forecast underspend against 26-27.
Okay, but not 25-26. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Do people want time to quickly read the policy, or is everyone happy to vote now? Vote now? Okay. Right. So we're approving the policy, either yes or no. So first up, you, Judy, because you're first on my list. Would you like me to go to the next person? I'll come back to you. Claire. Claire Scala.
Yes, I'll say yes.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes.
Yes. Nikki? Yes. Catherine? Yes. Julia? Yes. I'm a yes. Raha? Yes. Phil? Not here. Liz? Sorry. Yeah. Shirley?
Yes.
Yes. Darren?
Yes.
Thank you. Peter? Thank you. Helen? Thank you. Amanda is absent. Oliver?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. David? Abstain. Ian Thomas?
Yes.
Yes. Kerry? No. Ian Morgan?
Sorry, I was going to say
Kerry's-
yes, I am
yes.
here.
Thanks,
It's
Kerry.
just a bit slow.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, for you. Thanks, Ian. Another thing there. Judy? Yes, thank you. That's okay. Thank you. Well, that's unanimously gone through. Thank you.
That leads us neatly onto the proposed growth fund for 26-27. So this schedule, again, we've discussed with the task and finish group, and we've brought in our colleagues from the place planning team to look at the projected places based on census data and school numbers going forward. So this is what we are proposing as our growth fund for 26-27. And we ask that the forum supports the proposed plan.
Go through the plan. It might be useful to actually go through the plan and the options.
In terms of the growth fund through the table.
Oh, the tables. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Say we had the discussion with task and finish to talk about the place
Oh, yes,
numbers. And what the Oliver Gill and his team felt was the need for the next year.
So we need to vote to approve.
Yes. So we asked for support for the budget. Essentially, now we've agreed the policy. This is agreeing the budget
Agreed
for
amounts
next
have gone
year,
out,
because
yeah.
obviously this impacts on the APT and the overall schools block.
Thank you. Well, just as questions first. Yep, Helen.
So can I just clarify which schools are eligible for it? Is it the schools which have been asked by the council to take pupils above their PAN for next year? Is that who's in the table?
So there's some previous agreements that are still ongoing
Okay.
due to changes in structure or needing extra places. And then as per the policy, there'll be certain sort of trigger points that schools have to hit to be eligible for growth funding. Then the task and finish group and forum will decide whether those trigger points are valid and if they get any
Right.
funding.
Okay.
Nikki.
So with regards to secondary schools in the area, if all of those secondary schools are having more spaces, are we saying that all of the secondary schools are full?
No, not all schools are full. Yeah.
So why do we need more places if there's capacity in the secondary school?
Yeah, it's an issue being explored at the school place planning working group. Probably Darren are in that group as well. It's the planning is have a sort of challenge how to balance the need. Some area you do have less capacity. We have an admission area in the north and south. And in terms of need, it cannot just one date just to fill all school. And while the other school were already in the planning trajectory in the past 3 years, it can suddenly stop. So there is a need for phase out that current arrangement. We expect by 2028, we would need those actual placement as we talk about here, and then we come to the situation all the school at the moment they cannot fill. By that time, we'll have more pupil source, you like, go into those schools. At the moment, it just reflects the current situation, like the need for building that about what we call it kind of industrial optimal percentages are kind of 5% percentage. It's a system, 5%. In not every school has 5% actual capacity in order to make sure on the admission date, pupil can be allocated a school place. But eventually, if those schools full, we can direct people to go to the school. Parents may choose not to send the children to the school. It's more complex than just having one sort of administrative route that we have 2,000 people. We just deliver 2,000 places every school because there's a parental choice here as well. Although we can say that we can have some sort of more administrative sort of leverage to force some parents to take up other places, but there are elements of parental choice that we need to pay attention to, which we will come to that position. We think by 2028, we want the parent to choose all the school available in the area. So to answer your question straight, not all schools are full at the moment.
But parental choice shouldn't be part of the growth policy.
Yeah, it's part of that, of considering how we influence parenting choice. That will take time. It's a culture,
But you're saying parental choice is part of the policy?
It's a part of consideration of the historical and also the trend, also where we have tendency. I think, for example, we do have school, because in the past 2 years, we have a situation like the need for a greater improvement. Yeah, although we work with the community, we send our message to the community. Children need to go to your local school, you need to attend the school, whatever. But I do have parents that insist they want to send the children to a nearby school or another school that may not have vacancy. But we do have that to answer your question, we do have that consideration, how to phase that out carefully. So you wouldn't just give the community a shock. It's just, no, we stop doing this now. Everyone just feel that school. It sounds simple. It's more complex.
It's worth adding that, and I'm not an expert on place planning, but I'm slightly familiar, that we can have capacity as a system as a whole, but there are these sort of output areas where there can be pockets of growth. So that's where the growth funding sort of comes into play, as well as addressing those previous agreements that have been put in place for structural changes, such as the school taking on girls as well as boys, that sort of thing.
But I have to say that it's absolutely a good point. That exactly we, in our school place planning, we work toward that situation when every school can be filled, but it's not a one-day task. And considering in the past, we just, in past 1 year or so, we have more reliable sort of sufficiency need information and projection for next 5 years, 10 years. So our planning will reflect what you just said. I think it's a very good point, really good point. I have to share with you, to be transparent, we do have a couple of school leaders, my CEO school leader, make the similar presentation about, on exactly the same concern.
Yeah, so I got Claire online first, and then Judy, and then Shirley. Okay, Claire.
I think you might have touched on the answer to my question. I was just going to say, what sort of expenses are these schools getting investment for? I take it when you were talking about the addition of girls, that's probably forest and sort of structural changes to bring in facilities for girls. My kind of concern with investing in secondary schools, taking Forest as our obviously nearest secondary school. Obviously, we've got low numbers from year 3 downwards. So once 4, 5, and 6 have moved through the up to secondary school and beyond, we're going to be giving us and most of the local primary schools around here are going to be giving those secondary schools less children when they go into year 7, because numbers on roll are going down and down. And touching on the point that the colleague made just now, if we've got secondary schools with spaces, then we're investing on increasing the size of other schools. I just foresee, are we going to be in the same position that we're in now, where we've got existing primary schools which are reducing PAN, yet new schools have been built, investment has been made to increase other local primaries. I just feel like this problem's just going to be passed on to secondary schools when all these lower class number groups move up to secondary. I just wanted to raise that as a concern.
Thank you, Claire. Again, another very good point. This is a factor we have built into our school place planning. Yeah, as I said that, in 2 years ago, when we faced the situation, Shirley can confirm that we had a situation. We asked the secondary school, we have, I remember when I came, about 18 or 19 girls cannot be placed at any school at all. And then we're talking about
And Forest was under PAN by over 200 children per year group.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. So we at that time, remember, we had to ask other authority, can we place those girls in your authority or not? Okay, I think at that time, we kind of respond to that situation with a sudden sort of increase in secondary school pupil population. But what you suggest is very good suggestion. We look at the longer term. As I said 1 year ago, with expert like audit now in place as the head of HN we have longer planning for longer term, 5 years, 10 years, and we have a more reliable projection, internal falling roll, internal how that we impact in school. Let's link to what I said, why we said 2028, we will probably in a better position to fill all school. But they need to have that kind of that tapering time for us to manage the current challenge while implementing a long-term planning strategy. So it's a kind of what we pick up now is kind of the situation emerged about a couple of years ago. Now it calmed down a little bit for secondary school need. We still have need for secondary school place, but they will phase out. I think you are right, Claire, that the challenge of falling roll in secondary school start to have impact, but not big at the moment, but going to be a huge impact on secondary school. That's already been taken into account in our school place planning. I would suggest that also your colleagues in this forum are not really close to school place planning, decision, discussion, etc. I will take it back to make sure that group, they are your representative. They will give you more detail. Obviously, here I cannot give you all the detail about what have been discussed, all the issues being addressed there at the meeting. We do have a few leaders here actually attend that group as well. I can only remember Darren and anyone else, you are in that group as well. I think it's very important for us to link to that group's work. But Claire, I would say that's a very good point.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm part of that place planning group, and I know there's
Thank
a lot
you,
of work
mate.
going. with Oliver as well. And I know that a lot of it's been shared with the Federation and with the working primary heads. I've got Judy and Shirley, then Oliver. Judy.
There's 2 points I want to raise. Firstly, can you draw my attention to where it says in the policy that parental choice is taken into consideration for the Growth Fund? Well, I've got a big mouth as well. Can you draw my attention where it states in the growth policy that parental choice is going to function in how that funding is allocated?
Can I clarify? Yeah, so the parental preference may influence the capacity, but in terms of growth funding, parental preference does not come into it.
That's different from what Ming said.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, yeah, parental preference does not come into the growth funding.
So then why are we taking into consideration the fact that we've got empty schools and those children could therefore go to a school that it was already well established, such as Forest? Forest has spaces for boys and girls, factoring in that Wokingham have a very poor history for place planning and nothing to substantiate that when there was when the roles in primary were growing, which is what's being picked up at the moment by some secondary schools, they built all of the new schools, which are now not full. And so I don't think that it's wise to use funds for predicted places. Alex said that there's pockets of growth. Well, we know that's where there's going to be new building, but we also know that to establish one school place, you have to build 800 houses. So it doesn't really add together. So I can't possibly approve giving money to schools to grow when they're already empty and there are empty schools within the same vicinity. I don't think we can trust the experience of place planning, even though Ming says that people have learned from it. I believe that if there's a local secondary school such as Forest with capacity to take pupils, those pupils should go to that school.
And just for real clarity here, I think people have forgotten that Forest had first choice of 24 children when place planning was approved year on year to give not hundreds but millions to other schools. Despite me raising it time and time again, that Forest had capacity, that money was still given, and it was given for buildings. And for clarity, this money is given to put teachers in front of children. So I am losing 132 children in year 11, and I will be potentially taking 270 children. My lag funding will fund me. There's a difference. It's not rocket science. There's a difference of not just 70, but over 130. Having had to make staff redundant over the last 9 years since I've been in post and the 5 years before I arrived due to a dropping role, the staff capacity, I have to put more staff in place to put these children through the door. For clarity, when we talk about undersubscribed secondary schools, my first choices are exactly the same as Wangel's, so let's call it out. My first choices are the same, so we're going to bring parental preference into it's irrelevant. This funding arrangement was put in place when I agreed to go oversubscribed. I didn't want to go oversubscribed. I wanted to take my 210. The local authority needed extra people in the last 2 years, so I have taken those children to support the local authority and continue to do so to support the local authority. I think it's interesting that Forest has been named and shamed when we've not had anything like billions, like other schools on here. And I feel like actually we've worked really hard as a school to support the local authority and other secondary schools throughout this time. And we've been really open and honest in all our discussions about this. The buildings I put in place were funded by reserves that I built up, meaning that, you know, not having business managers, not having deputy heads for years on years. So through prudent planning, so I'm fully prepared for the role drop in the future years. And I agree with Judy in that everybody else needs to be prepared for that. But equally, there are children who need places in the local authority now, and the funding I'm being given is to put those children into classrooms and try and reduce some of the traffic across the local authority, which is what's going on at the moment. Because if a child does not get, and correct me if I'm wrong, if a child does not get one of their top 4 schools, the local authority direct them and have to supply potentially transport, etc., etc. So whilst it's not parental preference, the money that I'm receiving for this growth fund, if approved, is less than what it will cost ferrying some of these children across the local authority. And having spent over an hour and a half from getting from Frimley this morning through Wokingham traffic, I think actually anything we can do to reduce capacity on the roads is better. So all of that taken into consideration. But ultimately, there is if we're not going to take these extra children, then that's fine. But I won't be taking the children. But they're not going to be going to the schools that people think they're going to go to, unfortunately. So I think that needs to be considered here, because that's what happened in the past when other schools were being given funding. I always had over 120, 130 places. Those of you who've been here long have heard me say year on year, I've got places, I'll take them. You know, we went co-education to support the local authority and the placing in this local authority. Against our judgment, we held off as long as we could, but we were a school that was going to close if we did not go co-educational, because the funding was elsewhere. Nobody cared when we had no money, no children, dropping roles. Millions were going to other schools, millions. And we can go back and look at it. For growth of schools, you're absolutely right. I've built toilets and a safeguarded reception with a small amount of money that mostly has come from my budget and making prudent decisions throughout the time. But I need to staff to put children in my school for September and the previous Septembers. We're not oversubscribed in terms of year 9, 10 and 11, and we continue to take children that other schools say, because they are oversubscribed, say there are no places in our schools. So we are still the dumping ground for year 9, 10 and 11, so to speak, because we have places. So we're not full, for clarity, but we are full in year 7 and 8.
Thank you, Shelley. I'll just go to Oliver first, because he...
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And so I appreciate I'm sort of walking into sort of a lot of history about sort of place plan. I guess this is just a couple of observations. And the other trust I work in, we had to manage 5% growth in pupil numbers on lagged funding, which was 700,000. So I have a lot of sympathy for trying to sort of manage and plan curriculum and plan it. I guess again, I just make the point: the fall in roles is not appropriate. That's not our sort of places to sort out. I mean, I just look at the table in the appendix, and obviously I've got to declare an interest because Wangels is in the trust, and I think it's particularly obviously affected in seeing a significant drop in numbers, and we're having to sort of plan for a reduction in that, and that's as painful, if not more so than sort of planning growth. I just have to point out, there's already a 1% reduction in pupil numbers in totality. Across the sector, all the indication are that it's likely to be by the end of the decade a 15 to 20% reduction in pupil numbers that we've collectively got to try and manage. And I just wonder what the place plan looks like and what the numbers look like and where the places are if we didn't go ahead with this. If you didn't have to staff up to the extra places. I mean, I think the sort of I think Tom's been quite sort of clear about the position. I mean, we just can't support that because of the effect, but have to obviously declare an interest because we're particularly affected by the sort of secondary movements.
Catherine.
Thank you. Well, I'm supposed to represent all the councillors, and what I'm going to say doesn't necessarily it's more my own view from Spencer's Wood and Swallowfield and Shinfield. That I mean, it's the same sort of things could be said about Oakbank. That Oakbank, has suffered from lack of funding, and I mean in the buildings. I mean, not necessarily in the, we've had a lot of problems with the trust there, and we've got a new trust. But I believe they haven't managed to secure all the funding that they wanted for actually bringing old buildings back into use. So even if it was the best school in the borough, it wouldn't be big enough. Or at least even if all the parents in the local area wanted to send their children there wouldn't be room for them because there aren't the buildings, and there are buildings that are mothballed and can't be used. So, there are places to put funding where there are room for children, theoretically. That's the point that I wanted to make.
Thank you. Judy, I'll come back to you and then Mark.
Okay, I think there's a number of things that I think we all know that the place planning wasn't the greatest before, but what we've seen in the forecast and we've seen that it's improved. We've also got schools that have been promised growth funds in the past. They're budgeting on growth funds, and therefore, if you take it away, then that is also another issue for the schools as well. So I think it's about what do we do moving forwards. We're in a position where schools are got falling roles, we've got these other agreements, but what we also have is a surplus within the growth fund, so which we are proposing. The proposal is to put into the high needs block. So I think what we need to sort of think about as well is that there's been valid reasons why these have happened with the local authority and the schools to support. So I think it's twofold. We need to support those schools, but equally we need to know, well, what do we do with this surplus? Is there a middle ground about what do we do with it moving forward, and have more clarity about how future arrangements are made? But I think we're in a position of more informed knowledge. We can see that with the planning. So I think what we need to think about is that sort of bigger picture as well.
So from my perspective, we are holding on to a lot of money just in case. And we've got schools that have had to meet the requirements for staffing classrooms for children that don't go to those schools anymore, because the schools have got falling roles, and therefore, such as my school, operating in a hugely deficit budget without even anybody meeting the staffing costs for me to meet my ratios for health and safety. So for money to be put into schools that can't guarantee they're going to have places, rather than to schools who have to fund the places even though there are no children. And yes, I can rely on my lagged funding for another 18 months or so, but after that, I mean, I'm in the process of making teachers redundant. I met with a member of Wokingham Borough Council's education place planning team earlier in the week, who told me, with hindsight, St Cecilia's would never have been built.
Thanks, Judy. I think we could all have stories about what the authority have and haven't done. I think we could be here all day doing that. We've got Claire.
But Brian, that the places that are filled with children in St Cecilia's are almost the exact equivalent to the places that I have empty and St Paul's have empty. So those places were available in A Good and, of course, my outstanding school. And I also understand that St Cecilia's is falling to pieces.
Thank you. Claire.
I just wanted to kind of confirm with my point I was raising, that I wasn't questioning any of the schools, possibly Judy's questioning St Cecilia's, and I can totally see why. I wasn't questioning that the schools on that list are entitled to the investment, particularly Forest, in the fact that they are now taking girls. It was more just a question around the place planning and can we trust the local authority that they have done all of the due diligence that they possibly didn't do with primaries when some of the new schools such as St Cecilia's were built. I'm certainly, I just wanted to sort of reiterate that to Shirley particularly. It wasn't should Forest get this money or not, from my point of view. It was just how can we trust that that mistakes are not being made again? That's all I just wanted to say.
Thank you, Claire. Ming, do you want to respond to?
Claire, I just want to clarify that school place planning now is formally one of the 4 priority area. Have the school-led system is not just local authority. So that group chaired by a CEO, supported by local authority, head of HNS as a technical support, like any decision make, all of the decision, school place planning decision make in that group is a school-led system decision. It's not just local authority decision. Just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Ming. Thank you. I think the difficulty is that most of us are within schools here and now, and one way or another, we're all trying to firefight the decisions, the poor decisions that have been made in the past. So whilst it's good to know that the future is looking possibly better with place planning, it's about survival for everybody now with the mistakes that have been made in the past. And I think that's worth kind of noting. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. That is exactly what we want to avoid, to make any mistake or to minimize any sort of wrong forecasting, etc. That's why the local education system leader collectively decided this need to be decided as a education partnership through a school place planning working group, chaired by Marcia. Sorry, yeah. That mechanism we set up decision making mechanism exactly for the reason to avoid any unnecessary mistake. Do you want to say something?
Thank you, man. Angela.
No, I was just going to say that's why we sort of highlighted the growth fund policy and the revisions that we feel were needed to ensure that we were adhering to the guidelines. Funding was going to where it was actually needed. The growth fund this year is about £1 million, over £1 million less than last year. So really, we were looking to address those reservations that people had.
Yeah, and just to clarify the proposed growth fund, these are the kind of tail end of the agreements that have increased the places over the last few years, when we have seen the increase in the demand on the secondary sector. So rather than this kind of looking forward to expanding place in, rather than this looking forward to expanding place in the future, these are the end of the agreements that we already had in place, which I think we've already sort of touched on. So it's fulfilling those kind of commitments that we had to those schools.
I think that's clear, and I'm happy for it to be noted that this is a legal agreement that has been drawn up with the local authority when we agreed to take extra girls and girls originally to support the local authority. So this was a legal agreement drawn up, so the local authority are bound to fulfil that requirement under legislation.
Yeah, I was about to add, these are all historic agreements. There's nothing new here for new places. It's all what's already been done in the past. I think the surplus that we're talking about, that is for a discussion and decision later. What we're looking at currently is the agreed amount that is up there on the boards for everyone to see. That is historic, and we're just here to either agree it or not approve it. Okay? So if we don't approve, then it will have quite an impact on the schools that have had historic legal agreements already with the authority. Okay. So if we go through and vote, unless anyone else wants to add anything further, I think everyone's voiced their frustrations. I think over the past with place planning, moving forward, we'd hope that there's more clarity and stronger decision making, which we feel is on the board path now with the panels and the different groups that are set up, and more variety of partnerships involved. But just looking at what's on the board now, on those proposed growth funding, this is what we're actually discussing and approving now. So if we go through the vote, so I have a yes or no approving. Claire Scallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes.
Yes. Judy? No. Nikki?
Can you put the
Abstain?
mic
Yep.
on when you vote?
Catherine?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Julia?
Yes.
Yes. I'm a yes. Raha? Yes, thank you. Phil's absent. Liz?
Sorry, Judy's voting for Phil.
A yes for Phil as well.
Yep. All right, Phil as well. Yep. Liz?
No.
No. Shirley?
Yes.
Thank you. Darren?
Yes.
Yes. Peter?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Amanda is absent. Oliver?
Yes.
Yes. David?
Yes.
Yes. Ian Thomas?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Kerry?
Yes.
Yes. Ian Morgan?
Yes.
Yes. I realise I haven't put Steve. And Steve?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so that is gone through. Thank you very much. Right, the next item, which I think would be just as controversial, leave that to you as well.
Thank you. Oh. So I was putting together the APT and the school budgets. We have been able to meet the national funding formula in full and deliver that, which is the first time we've been able to do it as a local authority. And historically we've been moving towards delivering it, but this year we've been able to match it. That has left us with a...
Sorry, Angela, before we I think we need to, there's a big well done, I think, on the authority part, getting us to the NFFR. We've been working on this for about 8 years to move forward, so I think we should be congratulated on actually getting to this point so far before we get lost on everything else. I think we need to recognise the work that's been done there. So thank you.
Thank you. So yes, we can meet that for the schools. That's resulted in a surplus within the schools block. So we have an element of the growth fund surplus that we've talked about, and there's some lagged funding. We think with the characteristics, for the pupil characteristics and the change in the census years, which has given us a surplus within that element of the schools block. So overall, we have a surplus of around £780,000 within the schools block. Historically, over the last couple of years, as part of the safety valve agreement, we've come to the schools to ask for a contribution towards the high needs block. It was part of the undertaking that we had with the DFE. This year, with the surplus for the growth fund and the other element of the surplus, the total surplus equates to about 0.48%. Previously, we've transferred 0.5% from the schools block, which has obviously come off the allocations to schools. So what we're asking for the schools forum to consider is there are a number of scenarios for what we can do with this surplus. Obviously, the kind of obvious one for us is the transfer to the high needs block, a contribution there. The Task and Finish group also asked us to look at other scenarios, which was to increase the growth fund. But I think we've already kind of had the discussion that really there isn't evidence for increased growth funding. There was a suggestion of a mix of the first two scenarios, a smaller transfer to the high needs block and some money in the growth fund. But again, we don't think there's any need for that growth fund money. And then the fourth one was to increase the funding factors above the national funding formula. The fourth one, we believe, is not a suitable action in terms of it will give us affordability problems next year in terms of how we stay at the national funding formula and how we continue to fund the schools as a year-on-year position. So our preference is for the surplus is transferred to the high needs block to support the work that we do there, which we believe benefits the schools community as a whole.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, colleague, I think Angela already articulated really well. We had this debate before Christmas about block transfer. I think it's not just about block transfer. All this money, the way I see this school's money, I saw some papers, kind of school funding, school block, school money, local authority, high need. It's not is all our education systems funding, early year block. You don't remember, you shouldn't forget school block, high need block, and central block. That all are school related funding. So we as a system leader sitting here, I keep saying system leader because you represent not only your school, you represent the system. The same when, I remember last May or June when my team, Jeremy, Emma Swinton, or reach out to you to say how we can best to achieve. We need to do this block transfer. And some authorities just go to Secretary of State to ask for direction, or something. We need to get involved here. We also reach out to school leader to say, one of the things we have heard, there are a couple of things, good suggestions. One of the things we have heard, we want school funding, national funding formula 100% to be funded. If you can find anything creative, I think we may be interested in that. Another suggestion is really, I think, from the outset, we can work out the block transfer exactly what you're going to spend on. Let's go, we can identify the priority, maybe more likely school leader or voluntarily to agree to this without going to the Secretary of State. So this is one of the actually suggestions come from the school leader to say, look at the national formula, we fulfill, as Angela said, 100% will cover. If you can find anything, then present it to us. That's where we are. I have to say that my finance colleague work like sock out, try to find an option with the task finish group to sit down. But again, the world is your world. But I really urge, I think, as a system leadership here, we need to look at the whole block, not just my school, the school block. I think I can see that if I'm a head teacher, I will make it a priority as well. It is a priority. But sitting here at the school Poland, we as a system leader, we want to look at all 4 blocks need. And then every year can be different. This year we may think this is something now we want to use the 0.48 for high need block. Not even use the words block transfer. It's about it defines pot of money. You have a piece of cake. You're a school leader. You decide how to cut it. That's what it's about. I really urge you to say yes to this, really. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Ming. Can I just clarify? You've gone for the disability education with the DFE. If this surplus does get transferred through, does that mean that will come away? You'll pull back from that application to the DFE?
We have, yes, well, for this. We go back to our executive. They probably don't need to go to Secretary of State. You say yes. But if not, that's the only option. We try to avoid that option. To answer your question, yeah. Final colleague may want to say something about it.
I mean, it makes it makes the argument with the corporate leadership team that much easier and convincing if we can state that we've got agreement from the Schools Forum for the transfer of the surplus. So like the last few years, we've managed to say, we've got agreement of 0.5. I think, there's no risk to going to the DFE for more. So certainly from my perspective, if we were to be able to secure that vote to transfer the surplus, and this is unlike previous years where we've actually had to top slice the individual schools' budgets. This is a surplus in part because of the growth fund differential between the allocation and the distribution, but also because of the change in pupil characteristics. So yes, it would make it that much easier to persuade.
But there's not a guarantee that they won't, so they could still go to DFE and ask for the 1%. Okay. Darren. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. I just want to clarify a point from Task and Finish that Angela made. Task and Finish didn't recommend increasing growth funding for this year. What Task and Finish wanted to explore was any surplus or part of a surplus from the growth fund, the 400,000 in growth fund for 26-27, that being rolled over into 27-28, and therefore creating a bit of a buffer for any growth funding in 27-28. So it wasn't to increase the allocations for growth funding for 26-27.
Thank you, Darren, because I think our understanding is that the growth funding will be less next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, based on the place planning, as well as the DFE funding methodology for growth funding next year, they'll both be less.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, so we're voting for, firstly, on the first point is, oh, sorry, yep.
Sorry, it's me again. So just a couple of points. I mean, first of all, it sounds really positive it can match the NFF, because obviously that's sort of what nationally they think is going to schools, or they've sort of planned to schools. So that sounds great. And particularly, I think the free school meals, because that did surprise me how low that was, and how far away that was from the funding formula. So just a few points that, just in terms of not seeing Patrick, I think, again, just to point out, I think the effectively schools that are on the minimum funding guarantee are going to see a 0% uplift, because all that's happening to the minimum funding guarantee is they're rolling in the thing. I couldn't see anything in here about minimum funding or what that does in terms of guarantee. So you're going to have likely to have more schools being dragged into getting nothing. I think the primary, and I appreciate the primary element was over in 25-26, but again, a suggestion maybe going from 1.5 over to effectively just straight to NFF. I don't know, is that, a shock? I mean, I think Andrew, you're right. I think having different rates than National Funding Formula, if you can match it, gets confusing. But I'm just, I guess, going from being over to being straight to the NFF in 1 year for a primary or PU, when the primaries is receiving, how also dealing with performing roles might be quite a shock, and whether there's any possibility to sort of phase that down, maybe a bit slower. And I guess, again, just to make the point, I assume that the free school meals has been, from everybody's nodding, the free school meals has been an historic underfunding issue. And again, in recognition of that, whether it would be worth putting more into free school meals for 1 year, so going above NFF, to recognise that has been a hidden deficit. Because again, I always struggle a little bit with surpluses and deficits, because on paper it's really easy to track it, but just please remember that schools have hidden deficits. So we're funding alternative provision that's gone through the roof. We've had other pressures going through the roof. We have to deal with that within it, and effectively you've been paying 85p per day for free school meals, and we're having to give out we've been having to subsidise that out of existing budget. So some recognition of that, and I don't know whether it's, I mean, I was hoping you might be able to do something in 25-26 from under use of growth funding, but it sounds like it's all spent. So I would make a plea that maybe there's consideration about 1 year sort of free school meals going above NFF, to recognise that schools have had to pick that up out of their reserves. I think it would help in terms of the falling role. And I get all the thing about top slicing, just for a little bit of ultimatum about agree to it or we'll take up 1%. So I completely agree. But again, the high needs challenge is a national challenge. And if you want to encourage inclusion in mainstream, you might, and I don't think you plan very well, so apologies, but funneling in any money that goes into high needs back into increased top-ups or all that sort of thing would be positive, because the direction of travel is to try and encourage mainstream to hold more, and it's probably a better value than independent sector, very high cost. So any money that goes into high needs, I would encourage, needs to sort of have a very clear route back into mainstream. But I guess that'd be my opinion. If there is any way of dampening the impact on primaries and recognising the underfunding of free school meals next year, I think that would be positive.
The bit about NFF, we have been moving towards that over. It's been a phased approach for about 8 years, so it's not jumping from one thing to another, and it is, we recognise that actually, especially for the disadvantaged, that has gone up quite significantly this year to past years. But yeah. Catherine.
Hi, can I just clarify I've understood that if we were to vote for option 1 or 3, that you're not able to guarantee that an application will not be made to the Secretary of State for the 1%? Have I understood that correctly?
What we want clarification is the application made to the Secretary of State for the 1%, because we said no to the transfer at the last school forum. Catherine wants a clarification. If you get scenario 1 through, will this application be withdrawn?
You need to put the mic on. You need to put the mic on to reply.
Yeah, you the option for transport to High Knee Block be agreed here. We will go back to ask for the process of applying to Secretary of State to stop.
And if we voted for a mix of scenarios 1 and 2, so option 3, that would be withdrawn as well.
Yeah, I cannot guarantee that will take place, but I will. Yeah, but the first option more likely. But if there's a mixture, we will choose the mixture. Our scenario 1 and 2, I will have report to my executive to see what decision. But I cannot guarantee that will be taken off. I don't know what the final colleague.
It's probably worth noting that if we increase the growth fund and it was underspent, we can't, because the DSG is in deficit, we can't actually roll those funds forward to next year. So essentially, they most likely get absorbed into the DSG deficit. So just want to make you aware of that we can't actually roll those funds forward to next year because of the DSG deficit that the LA has.
Okay, so that means you've got, if the surplus wasn't transferred to High Needs Block, if it was agreed it wasn't, then it would become down to option 4, which would be increase the factors. So schools would see that surplus come to them. They're the two scenarios, isn't it, really? Surplus either goes to the schools or it'll go to High Needs Block.
Yes. Yes, but as an LA, we don't, we aspire to hit 100% NFF, not over, due to the risk that it puts on budget planning in subsequent years. So if the schools forum agreed with that, it's most likely that the LA wouldn't agree, and so then it would go to the DFE for adjudication.
Can I just ask Al, so does that mean that really option 2 isn't really an option? Is that what you're saying? Oh, and option 3 aren't really an option because
Really, yes, because if we were to increase the growth fund, we don't spend it all because we don't need to. We can't roll it forward to next year, so essentially it would just be absorbed into the DSG deficit. So I just want to make that clear because essentially it's just not the best use of those surplus funds. It would just disappear into the deficit.
I think I was perhaps under the impression growth fund was able to be rolled forward.
I don't think I would want that clarified. I would want that clarified because I don't think that's correct. I think you can roll forward funding in the growth fund even if you've got a deficit, and I am aware of other local authorities that have a carry forward in their growth fund even with a deficit in high needs, so I would want that to be clarified.
We put the part of the regulations in the paper, so that's what the regulations state. If you're in DSG surplus, you can roll forward those funds like any other centrally retained funds. Unfortunately, if we're in deficit.
Sorry, I'll comment. Claire.
Can I just ask the when we voted on the 1% transfer that was not put through at the last meeting, what total money would that have meant going to the high needs block, that 1%? I can't remember, or approximately how much money would it have been?
Be about 1.6 million, 1% transfer.
So am I right in thinking then that you are saying we're going to transfer over this 779,000 potentially if we agree on it today, but then there's still going to be, based on what Wokingham were asking back in December, if it was 1.6, we're short by whatever that is, 800,000. So am I right in thinking there is a chance then that you're going to be applying to the DFE to get that difference between those two numbers, or somewhere near it? Because 779 is not 1.6 million, is it? This is just a contribution towards what you originally wanted.
Yes. We have, in the past 2 years, we have less success in internal presenting to DFE to say that although this is written in our commitment as a safety valve for the years until 2028, 2029, but local partnership is very strong. They look at their own circumstances. They put forward 0.25%. We present to the DFE advisor. They accept that. They said that this actually positive thing is your partnership is strong. You don't need to come to the Secretary of State to ask for 1%. So we can do the similar things here to say that we do not need to ask Secretary of State to give a direction. But the local partnership already agreed for that. Although not quite 0.5%, but 0.48, we can make it like case similarly to previous years.
Thank you. Judy.
So I need clarification of that point in a moment. So my understanding was that it was put to the vote, and correct me if I'm wrong, and nobody agreed to the 1%. So that was already sorted out, and I think that there were different variations of suggestion from 0.25%, and I thought that that was something that we'd come to an agreement within Forum and the Task and Finish group and the people voting. So Al, can you just clarify the position from the DFE from what Ming has said with regard to, did they say that they don't need to be involved in the decision-making process?
So the DFE only need to be involved where Schools Forum do not agree to a 0.5% transfer, or if the LA wants to pursue a transfer over 0.5%.
Okay. So we're looking at 0.48%. So if we pay the 0.48%, does that mean that the schools don't need to make a contribution from their budgets to the high needs block?
Yes, currently at that 0.48%, all schools are on 100% of the NFF.
Yep.
So it's a sort of a surplus amount that would be transferred, so it wouldn't affect the school budgets.
So rather than us making a contribution to the high needs block, which we voted on, just for clarification, because, I mean, it's useful to hear things more than once. So if we agree, then there's no top slicing from the school's budget, give or take 0.02%.
Yes.
So where'd you get your 0.02% from? Academies, I'm suggesting?
Well, no. I mean, nothing's guaranteed because we'd have to relay this information back to the corporate leadership team. But like the last 2 years we've had previous, if we had agreement of the 0.48%, I think we just go with that 0.48% and we try and convince and persuade CLT, corporate leadership team, that, we've done this in partnership. There's no need to risk trying to get another 0.52% and carry on with what we've we've had for the last few years.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Ask a quick question. If you had got the 0.5% through, what would you been doing with the surplus? If the 0.5 transfer had been agreed at the last forum, you've got the surplus, what would have been done with it?
I think the same as what we've modelled. That would be the surplus. That would be the transfer. Or have I misinterpreted?
No, so at the last school forum in November, if we had agreed 0.5% to be topsized from schools and gone through, and then you've come to us and said, right, we've also now got this 800,000, what would have happened to this 800,000?
Yes, last time. I would think, correct me if I'm not wrong, the last time wouldn't use this sort of surplus for the list. You chose option 2, 1, 3. Option 1 here. We will come back to explore with the formula we used in the past 2 years. That's 0.5%. The ones with minimum funding guarantee, not paying, and you may want to come back to the strategy. Can we change the formula slightly or not? But wouldn't go down this route. That's what I thought at the time. I was not even in the country when you vote. Am I right? I think you vote yes last time. We'll go into school funding, school block directly instead of using this opportunity.
I think when we voted last time, it was theoretical because we didn't have the numbers. It was before the funding had been released, so we didn't know we would have this surplus, which is really, really close to the 0.5% that we were asking for. So it's really difficult because the timing is just against us, that we have to come to you to talk about what do we think this will look like and what would you agree to without actually giving you the hard numbers, the finances. So we just model as best we can. So when we came to you before, we really didn't know we were going to end up, we hadn't foreseen that we would have a surplus of such a neat amount.
But Brian, I think if you'd voted yes in December, we'd model it exactly the same as we put in one of the appendices. That 0.58 is what that transfer would have looked like.
So there wouldn't have been a surplus?
No, there still would have been a surplus.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of if you voted yes or no in December, the surplus would still be there. So rather than taking a top slice from the individual schools like we've done in previous years, there just happens to be a surplus because of the growth fund disparity and the change in pupil characteristics. So although it's classed as a transfer, it's a surplus transfer.
Okay. So if we had the 0.5, you got that and you transfer that over, this surplus, would you have transferred this surplus as well?
No, we would have doubled. No.
Instead? Okay.
Hi, just another hypothetical scenario. If Schools Forum don't approve the 0.48 transfer and the Secretary of State does approve the 1% disapplication, does that mean that schools would then have top slice, a reduction in their overall funding?
They would. So based on the modelling, if that were to be the case and 1% was pursued and approved, then the NFF values would reduce by 0.6%. And we've applied that to all national funding factors, so we're consistent across the board. And that is in one of the appendices in the paper, yeah.
Chair, so I just said all those effort, time we spend working, not all local areas doing this way. It gives ourselves some flexibility. We think it was the best option. You just go to the simple sort of 1% transfer, 0.5. But other areas doing that, like Surrey, I know Surrey did that. You don't have choice. You don't have the just doing that way. So we spend so much time on this. I think that it's just Number one, partnership, reflect our strong partnership. Number two, give us sale choice. I know the choice is very limited because everyone is short of money, I think. But what I would like to say, this is a piece of cake. It's school's money. It doesn't matter whatever name is surplus, Heine block, school block. It's school's money. It's citizens' money. How you divide it? I repeat myself already.
Sorry, me again. I said the point, but I say it again. I can absolutely understand the flow through and the rationale, and there's the NFF, and I think it is, like you say, it's a function of the growth and the characteristics. I'll make the point again. Please don't equate a surplus in inverted commas on a spreadsheet with surpluses in schools. We're talking about per pupil rates in falling roles where we've got uneconomic class sizes, unfunded alternative provision, high needs, etc. And we are all in it together, but I'll just make the point, please, when you're presenting, don't equate a surplus on a spreadsheet with surpluses in schools. Schools need this money. Schools need more money, so does high needs. Everybody, but that's not our, we're not fixing that. I do worry when you equate, well, we can just move this money because it's not needed. It is needed in schools. The NFF isn't appropriate in falling roles. There's not enough money in schools. We seem to have completely written option 4 off the table, which I absolutely get for planning purposes. But I'll make the point again, just because on a spreadsheet, you add up the NFF times pupil characteristics, it doesn't equal a number. It is not the same as surpluses in schools. I'll just make that point.
Yeah, no, and it's a fair point. And I don't think option 4 has been totally wiped out. And it certainly wasn't by Task and Finish Group. Yeah.
I suppose what we've got to weigh up and is with the 0.48 transfer and move to the NFF, it looks as though most schools will be better off overall on a per pupil basis, some more by quite a lot more than others. There will be 3 schools that will lose out, 3 or 4 schools that will see a reduction of some sorts. But I think there is also that risk of the Secretary of State intervening, and they may do it there. So I think actually, is this the best option overall? Because otherwise the risk of if you vote no, then there is a possibility that we could get 1% and end up with even less. So I think that needs to be considered.
Thank you, Mark. Darren.
Thanks, Brian. Just as Chair of Task and Finish, I'm a little bit disappointed just hearing this morning that growth can't be rolled into next year, because I know Wokingham have done that historically, and one of the forum members mentioned earlier that other local authorities do that. So I would certainly ask as Chair of Task and Finish that there's a little bit more clarity on that in future when we next meet, if that's okay. If we can't roll any into growth for next year, then that leaves effectively 800,000 or just under 800,000. And I'm going to reiterate the point that was just made about increasing funding factors above NFF. Free school meals has been historically underfunded in Wokingham, and we've been trying as a Task and Finish group to get that up for a number of years, and we've been successful this year. So I really think, and we had an email this morning from one of the CEOs saying that they would prefer funding to be put into increasing the factors for 26-27 to put more money back into schools. I think it's important to note that one of the things that we discussed at Task and Finish was a sort of halfway house scenario where 0.25%, so around about 400,000 was transferred to high needs block, and then 400,000 was either used to increase their NFF factors or rolled into growth for the following year. So if rolling into growth for the following year isn't now necessarily on the table, then that comes back to a 0.25% transfer, so 400,000 into high needs block and 400,000 to increase the NFF factors. So I think it's important just to clarify those points of what Task and Finish spent quite a lot of time talking through. And I'll leave that there, Brian.
Thank you, Darren. Yes, no, we've had a number of meetings and we just try and move forward on this. And I think that last point around the different options should still be considered. But if we do the vote now, and then we'll see where we get after this first vote, and then if we need to look at the other options from there. Okay, so the first vote is School Forum supports WDC's decision to employ scenario 1. So that's the surplus going to the transfer of the high needs block. So Judy. Claire?
Are you able to come back to me? I just feel like I need a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep. Mark?
4.
4. Nikki?
Can you come back to me as well, please?
Yep. Catherine?
Brian, could you read out what everybody's voting as you have, or say it out like you did previously?
Yeah,
Because
okay,
I
so-
can't hear what everyone's saying. Thank you.
No problem. Judy's 4. Claire, we're coming back to. Mark is 4. Nikki, we're coming back. Catherine?
Sorry, I'm interested in voting for a combination. So are we just voting on
Just on the
point
first scenario at the
so
moment.
I say no to
No.
the whole amount.
Okay, thank you. Julia?
I think with the absence of the clarity of the growth fund carry forward, I would abstain.
Abstain. I am no at this stage. Raha?
Sorry, what was yours?
No. Raha?
No.
No. Phil? He's not here.
Julie was voting for Phil.
Phil? Yeah. Oh, he's abstaining. Yep. Liz? That's a no.
I'd say no to 1.
No to 1. Shirley?
No.
No. Darren?
No.
No. Peter? No. Helen?
No.
No. Amanda is absent. Oliver?
No.
No. David was a yes. Ian Thomas?
I mean, yes.
Yes. Kerry?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, a no. My
No,
apologies.
sorry, no.
I'm a no. I
Ian?
was like, yes, what can I do for you?
I'm going to abstain on it.
Abstain. Steve?
No.
No. Coming back to Claire?
Sorry, abstain.
Abstain. Nikki?
No.
No. Right, so that is a no on the first part. The next one is looking at a mix scenario, which would be a 0.25% transfer.
I'm just wondering whether it would be easier to ask people what is their option, rather than voting 4 times.
I mean, we don't necessarily need to vote on it.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily need to vote on a formula change, but you know, it's useful to have the schools forum's views on how it should be used.
What's your preferred choice?
The third choice, scenario 3 or scenario 4 are the choices. So the scenario 3 choice would be a 0.25% transfer and the other half going towards NFF factors or increase factors above the NFF. Catherine?
I think a lot of us are going to find it very difficult with the without any clarity on whether the growth funding can roll forward on that. But I guess we still need to vote. The recommendation, if we're not clear, would be to abstain on that.
Abstain. Okay.
Is that what we would recommend? Okay.
Stuck, aren't we? You're going to have to take this forward to corporate, aren't you?
In light of yes, in light of that previous vote, yeah.
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 Okay. So
I get that. I think it would be helpful to get at least sort of a view. I mean, I just put it out there. I'd be really supportive of 50-50. I think it shows support to the system in terms of high needs, which we recognise is a system thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think it recognises both the hit that primaries have going from being above NFF to NFF in 1 year, and it recognises an historic underfunding of free school meals that schools have subsidised for a number of years. So I think it it shares historic pain that the schools have managed and makes a contribution. And I would appreciate it's not the sort of 0.5, and you may come back and go, actually, we want the other 0.5 or the 1, but that's sort of out of our control. I mean, I'd be very supportive of 50-50. I think given the discussion I've heard today and been part of on the growth fund, then it doesn't feel like more money into the growth fund, but I do get we probably need it, careful would be helpful, but I would certainly be supportive of 50-50. Just
I agree. I think it's a good option, and it will at least show some form of partnership. Maybe if we go through this vote, and you might have some form of thing to take back to corporate. So if we go for scenario 3, which is a 0.25% transfer to high needs block, and the other half going back to NFFA factors. Okay, so we'll start with this one. So whether you're for or against it, Judy? Nope. Claire?
4.
4, thank you. Mark?
So just to clarify, would that mean that we're still doing the national funding formula in full if we're doing this option?
Yeah, that would be an increase on one factors.
I could vote for on this and for on the other ones.
Yeah. Nikki?
Sorry, can you clarify that again? So that's not increasing the national funding formula.
We'd put 0.25% to high needs.
Yeah.
The other part of the surplus would go towards the NFF to increase a factor.
So to go over 100%.
Yeah.
No, I stick with no.
Yeah. Nikki? 4, thank you. Catherine?
Sorry, so we're voting for half of it to go to high needs and half to NFF. Yes.
Yeah.
4.
4.
Sorry, just to be clear what I'm voting for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. 4, yeah. Julia?
4.
4, thank you. I'm 4. Raha? 4. Phil? 4. Liz? 4. Sorry. Shirley?
I'm going to go 4, but as we haven't discussed this with Federation, which is what I'm supposed to be doing because I vote with Federation, but I'm going to go 4, so I'll be merging when I go back maybe.
Darren?
I'm for, Chair, with an understanding that corporate agree that they won't go to the Secretary of State for any more.
Thank you. Peter? 4. Helen?
4.
4. Amanda is not here. Oliver?
4.
4. David? Oh, he's not here. Ian Thomas?
Yep, I'm 4.
4. Kerry?
Yes, 4.
4. Ian Morgan?
Abstain.
Yep.
It doesn't actually affect my representation.
No. Steve?
I'm 4 as well.
4. Okay. So you've got unanimous support around that option that you could take.
I just want to make the point that formula changes aren't decided by forum, but it's really good to get, your views. Just want to make that point very clear.
Thank you. Is there anything else? There's more, yeah. Let's move to the next one.
Schools Forum are required to agree to the proposed budget for the Central School Services block. So this is the funding that we receive. It's 1.2 million this year, and it supports local authorities in the functions that we've got a statutory duty to deliver for all schools. The budget is in the appendix to show you how we propose to spend that. We've had the main change in the budget for 26-27 is we've moved the kind of capita costings to early years and high needs because that's where we use that information more. But that's the budget is there line by line showing you how we're proposing to spend it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or whether we can vote on that.
Any questions? Pretty historic. Lovely. All right. So hopefully this one will be, I haven't got a sheet.
Let's use
The past one. Yeah.
red.
We've done a lot of voting today. So we're voting to agree this proposal for the central services. Judy, can I come to you first? Claire?
Sorry, I'm just trying to have a quick look at it. Can you come back to me, please, Brian? And was it Appendix 4, did you say?
Yes.
Can't even find it.
Yes,
Okay,
I
thank
believe
you.
it's in Appendix 4.
Yep. Julia?
Thanks.
Sorry, can I just ask what the increase in the admissions up to 370 accounts for?
So we've rationalised the CSSB somewhat this year because for many years, I'm not sure how many years, we just rolled forward the budget. So we've reviewed the expenditure in each line item. I think it was admissions and education welfare. By moving out the capita costs into the high needs block and early years block, like Angela just mentioned, we're able to use the CSSB to contribute more to the roles that we've actually got in those departments, because we've been fairly underfunded in certain areas. So it's to try and cover that gap.
So is that for headcount costs?
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mark?
4.
4. Nikki? 4. Catherine?
4.
4, thank you. Julia?
4.
4, thank you. On 4, Raha? 4. Phil? 4. 4. Liz? 4. Shirley?
4.
4, thank you. Darren?
4.
Thank you. Peter? 4. Helen?
4.
4. Oliver?
4.
4, thank you. Ian Thomas?
4.
4. Kerry?
Agreed. Yeah, 4.
Agreed. Abstaining?
No, I'll go 4.
You're 4. Steve?
4.
4, thank you. Claire?
4.
Thank you. Judy? 4. 4. Never see through. Thank you.
Moving on to the high needs block. I'll hand over to you.
Unfortunately, we're not seeing any year-on-year growth in the funding. They've changed the funding formula somewhat in 26-27. We are sort of waiting on news from the white paper to see if we'll get some additional grants, but year-on-year, they've essentially used the 25-26 allocation, incorporated the grants that we received, and that's our 26-27 funding number. Year-on-year, we're seeing around about a 7% increase in our cost base, which broadly aligns to 25-26 increase. And there have been some big reductions on budget and previous years, so we are starting to see it flatten out, which is encouraging. And that increase year-on-year in the expenditure profile does align with the EHCP increases we're seeing. There is a lot of volatility in each stream, but overall we're looking at about a 6% increase in our new EHCPs. A lot of the cost base does come from not only new EHCPs, but also existing EHCPs and the changes that happen throughout the year. So we're looking at about a 21.6 million deficit for 26-27. That's excluding any high needs block transfer at the moment, because that's undetermined, with safety valve income forecast at 1.7 million. So still a massive strain on the LA, still growing. We're hoping that in the next couple of financial years that will hit its peak and start to decline. But yeah, it's 21.6 million forecast for next year.
So, we've got any questions?
Yes. So I've just been nosy.
That's right.
I think the answer is no, but I mean, obviously there was a lot of noise around the budget time around historic deficits. I guess that's I was going to say 62 million, but it's a lot higher than that, isn't it, nationally? But I guess there's a lot about sort of, the debt position and whether it be written off, which is, again, makes sort of transfers into the blocks. Obviously a political decision, because if there is any likelihood that deficits will be written off in some way, then again, it sort of supports not trying to transfer too much money from schools. I'm always really interested in what the numbers are. I don't know, again, it's probably something you had before, because in my experience, the INMSS is very expensive per pupil, because I appreciate it's the most specialist provision. But again, it's sort of understanding that flow. But again, it's that whole strategy about inclusion, isn't it? And in the mainstream, really. So I guess what we've been talking about today, that would then be factored into funding, presumably, if, like the transfer, the 0.25 would be on top of this, would it? This doesn't factor in any transfer, does it, at the moment?
No transfer has been factored into that at the moment.
Have you got any intelligence about what might happen at the, from, because often the local authorities are part of networks. I'm just being nosy, to be quite frank.
No, we are waiting with bated breath. Once we heard that central government will be picking up the responsibility for high needs block expenditure from 28-29, from a finance perspective, I was like, that's great. However, it didn't detail what happens to that brought forward deficit. And, by that time, we'll probably have a deficit in excess of £100 million. So it's a huge number. It puts a huge risk on the LA. We're just as keen to understand what's happening there, because it does have a sway on block transfers as well, as you rightly say, because if that's going to be written off, it gives you a different perspective on things. But no, we haven't heard anything, so we are very keen to see what's released in the white paper.
And if it helps, because I know sort of it's been probably a sort of relatively challenging meeting, but even in the time I've been in the system, I've seen some great examples of inclusion and sort of resource-based strategy. So it from a very early sort of understanding of what you're doing, I've seen some great examples of outreach and that type of stuff. So I'm very new, so I just feed that back from mixed sort of experience. It sounds like you're doing some really great things in terms of inclusion in mainstream. So feed that back, because I guess I've sort of said quite a lot this morning, so I thought it'd be nice to sort of say something.
Yes, we were very aware there's a lot of work that's been going on over the last few years. Right, so we're voting to recommend this high needs block budget. So Judy's kind of disappeared. Claire, come to you first.
So am I recommending the thing that's on the screen for the presentation, a £21 million deficit? Is that what I'm agreeing to?
Yes.
Essentially, yes, putting that forward to council next month. Yeah.
That feels like quite a big thing to vote for, but I suppose we don't have much choice.
No.
And it's really a recommendation rather than an actual vote. Yeah.
I agree. I agree to the 21 million deficit.
Thank you, Claire.
It's a great idea.
Mark? 4. Nikki? 4. Thank you. Catherine?
4.
4. Thank you.
4.
Phil? 4. Liz?
4.
Shirley?
4.
Four.
And thank you to Angela and Al for what they're doing, because I do think it is getting better year on year. So
It is,
thank
yeah.
you.
There has been an improvement, yes. Darren?
4.
4, thank you. Peter? 4. Helen?
4.
4. Amanda's not here. Oliver?
4.
4. David's not here. Ian? Thomas?
Yes, I'm 4.
Thank you. Kerry?
4.
4, thank you.
4.
4. Thanks, Ian. Steve?
4.
Thank you. And Judy? 4, thank you. There you go.
Thank you. Moving on to the early years block budget. This is currently under discussion with the early years task and finish group, because again, in terms of the funding and the modelling, it all comes to us quite late. The figures you can see on screen are the kind of total allocation and the kind of headline figures that we're looking at. Though, as I say, we want to talk to our early years task and finish group just to do a little bit of work around how the rates will fall out of that. I understand in previous years the Schools Forum has essentially kind of delegated that authority to recommend the early years budget to the early years task and finish group. So I'd like to request that we continue that and do that this year.
Ian, do you think you want to add?
Yeah, I think we're there. apart from a few that I've fed back and we've had some adjustments. So I think I'm more or less happy. I think we got some bartering to do with the early years team, but we're there. And I think you've got a statutory deadline of February the 28th, haven't you, to announce, which is ahead of the next schools forum anyway. So we need that authority, but we should get there.
Thank you. I mean, and the last few years, I think it's all worked quite successfully, the partnership you have and the work that you've done on this budget. So for us, it's just, is anyone against the idea of what's proposed? No? Thank you. Let's continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, you'll be pleased to know that's the end of everything we're asking you to vote on today. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the finance team and to Ming and his team. It's been a lot to get through today. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement with all the process and the questions that have been asked. I think it's been really worthwhile, and I know it's been a bit of a challenging session, but it's been good. Is there any other business? Anything else? Ming?
Just something for your information. I thought I may need to jump out. Luckily, I can sit here throughout. On Monday, we received notice local area SEN system being inspected. They call area SEN. It's not inspection on local authorities, but anything go wrong, we take a grant for that, if you like. But it's inspection on the whole system, ICB, health, NHS, local authority, and school partnership as well. I was about to talk to David and Peter because you were sitting in same area partnership on behalf of our school. And they may reach out to school. They already have a survey sent out to community, to school, to all practitioners. So far, so good. We are internal process. We submitted what we need submitted, but when required, we'll reach out to you and we will send out more detail to you on Friday's newsletter. You may get some email from Emma as well yesterday, I think. Yeah, thank you very much for all your support as I keep using the word system leader for our science system.
I just want to let people know of next steps in terms of school budgets. We need to submit the APT, which is the authority pro forma tool. That's this big spreadsheet we do all the workings, to the DFE next Thursday. So time is pretty critical. We'll obviously relay back the results of this forum to the corporate leadership team. And then based on decisions made with them and possibly the DFE, I suggest we relay back via email as to the outcomes of those meetings' decisions.
So I just asked a question. So if those conversations, there's support for what we've voted on today in terms of 0.25 and 0.25, does there need to be a further conversation about how the 0.25 gets played into the NFF, or do you calculate that? Do you need us to sort of form together? Because we haven't really discussed how and where we would put the NFF rates up today.
That's a good point. My first call is to liaise with Task and Finish Group to get a steer. That's what we've normally done in previous years.
That makes sense. I mean, just what we're just raising. So that'd be through the Task and Finish Group. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Task and Finish Group, that's what we'd go to first, and we can quickly call that group together. Yep. Thank you. For the next meeting, we have got the Revenue Monitoring Report and the DSG Management Plan, Safety Valve Update. I don't think there's much else to add at this point to that agenda. Thank you for today. I know it's been a long meeting, but thank you everyone for your work. And again, thank you to the finance team for all your work that you've done behind the scenes as well. Thanks, everyone.